Picture this. A man sits calmly in the eye of a storm. Around him, chaos swirls. People screaming accusations, relationships crumbling, careers collapsing. Yet he remains unmoved. Not because he's emotionless, not because he doesn't care, but because he discovered something so profound about the human psyche that nothing external could touch his inner core again. This man was one of Carl Jung's patients, and what Jung taught him is about to change how you experience every painful moment for the rest of your life. Have you ever felt like life keeps hitting you in the same spot? Like certain words, certain people, certain situations have this supernatural power to destroy your peace? You're about to discover why you've been programmed to suffer, and more importantly, how to reprogram yourself to become psychologically untouchable. Every single person watching this carries invisible wounds. Think about it. When someone criticizes you, it doesn't hurt equally across all topics, does it? Someone could mock your taste in music and you'd shrug. But let them question your intelligence, your worth, your deepest insecurities. Suddenly you're bleeding internally. Jung discovered something revolutionary. We don't actually get hurt by what happens to us. We get hurt by what happens to the unhealed parts within us. Imagine your psyche as an ancient castle. Most of it is fortified, strong walls, defended gates. But there are secret passages, forgotten dungeons, crumbling towers where you've hidden your deepest fears and shame. These are what Jung called your shadow aspects. And here's the terrifying truth. Other people instinctively know where these weak points are. They can smell them like predators smell fear. In 1913, Jung himself went through what he called his confrontation with the unconscious. For 3 years, he descended into his own psychological underworld. He faced visions so intense, so disturbing, that he questioned his own sanity. But what emerged from this darkness wasn't madness. It was a map to becoming truly untouchable. Let me tell you about Sarah, a successful executive who came to one of Jung's students in the 1960s. On the surface, she had everything: power, money, respect. But one specific type of comment could shatter her completely. Any suggestion that she was cold or unfeeling. Why this specific trigger? Because buried in her shadow was a little girl whose mother told her that showing emotions was weakness. So she built armor. She became successful, controlled, powerful. But that little girl never left. She just went underground, into the shadow realm, waiting. Jung's insight was radical. The things that hurt us most are the parts of ourselves we've rejected. Every insult that lands, every criticism that stings, every betrayal that devastates, they're all pointing to the same thing: your shadow. Here's where it gets interesting. Jung discovered that most people spend their entire lives running from their shadow. They build personalities like fortresses, hoping to keep the pain out. But the shadow doesn't stay buried. It finds ways to surface. It shows up in the people who trigger you, in the situations that break you, in the patterns that repeat endlessly in your life. Think about your worst enemy, the person who gets under your skin like no one else. Jung would say, that person is your teacher. They're showing you your shadow. What you hate most in them is what you've rejected in yourself. In 1921, Jung treated a patient who was tormented by jealousy. Every relationship ended the same way, with obsessive suspicion, explosive accusations, eventual destruction. The patient blamed the partners. They were untrustworthy. They were deceitful. They were the problem. Jung asked one question that changed everything. What if the betrayal you fear in others is the betrayal that already exists within you? The patient was furious. He was the loyal one. He was the victim. But Jung pressed deeper. Wasn't the patient betraying himself every day? Wasn't he betraying his own instincts, his own worth by choosing partners who confirmed his worst fears? Wasn't his jealousy itself a betrayal of trust? This is Jung's mirror principle. The external world is a reflection of your internal world. Change the internal, and the external must follow. But here's what nobody tells you. This isn't some mystical law of attraction nonsense. This is hardcore psychology. Your brain has something called the reticular activating system. It's like a bouncer for your consciousness, deciding what information gets in. And guess what it's programmed to look for? Whatever confirms your deepest beliefs about yourself and the world. If you believe you're unworthy, your brain will literally filter reality to show you evidence of your unworthiness. You'll notice every rejection, every failure, every sign that you don't belong. Meanwhile, it deletes all evidence to the contrary. Someone compliments you, your brain explains it away. Someone loves you, they must be mistaken. Now we arrive at Jung's most controversial insight, the one that modern self-help culture completely misunderstands. Jung didn't say to think positive or let go of negativity. He said something far more radical. Embrace your darkness, integrate your shadow, become whole. Picture an alchemist's laboratory. The alchemist doesn't try to turn lead into gold by pretending the lead doesn't exist. They work with the lead. They heat it, pressure it, transform it. Jung saw psychological pain the same way. Your wounds aren't obstacles to your transformation. They're the raw material. Here's a technique Jung developed that sounds almost too simple to work, but it's changed millions of lives. It's called active imagination. But I'll give you the practical version. When something triggers you, when someone's words cut deep, when a situation floods you with emotion, don't run. Don't distract yourself. Don't even try to let it go. Instead, go deeper. Ask yourself, what part of me is actually hurting right now? Not, why did they say that? Not, how could this happen? But what ancient wound just got touched? Because here's the secret. It's never about the present moment. That person who just insulted you, they're not powerful enough to create that much pain. They just pressed on something that was already broken, something from long ago, something you've been carrying like a ghost. Jung called the journey to psychological invulnerability individuation. It's not about becoming harder or building thicker walls. It's about becoming so integrated, so whole, that there's nothing left to trigger. Let me share the story of Victor, another of Jung's patients. Victor was a businessman who lived in constant fear. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of judgment, fear of abandonment. He described his life as walking through a minefield. Jung didn't try to eliminate Victor's fears. Instead, he had Victor dialogue with them, literally sit in a chair and talk to his fear as if it were a person in the room. What emerged was shocking. The fear wasn't trying to hurt Victor, it was trying to protect him. It was a part of him that got frozen in childhood, still trying to keep him safe from dangers that no longer existed. This is the breakthrough. Your triggers, your pain points, your emotional wounds, they're not your enemies. They're parts of you that got stuck in time, still fighting battles that ended long ago. Think about it. That harsh inner critic? It's probably using the exact words someone said to you decades ago. That fear of abandonment? It's a child's fear, still running on outdated software. That rage that explodes when you feel disrespected? It's not you. It's a younger version of you who never got to fight back. Here's the exact process Jung developed, refined for modern understanding. When you feel triggered, when something or someone hurts you, follow these steps. First, locate the sensation in your body. Emotional pain always has a physical component. Is it a tightness in your chest, a knot in your stomach, a pressure behind your eyes? Don't judge it. Just notice it. Second, give it an age. This sounds strange, but trust the process. If that feeling were a person, how old would it be? Often, you'll find it's surprisingly young, 5, 8, 12 years old. Third, dialogue with it. Ask, what are you trying to protect me from? Then listen, not with your logical mind, but with your imagination. Let it speak. You might be shocked by what you hear. Fourth, integrate it. Thank it for trying to protect you. Let it know the danger has passed. You're safe now. You're strong now. You can handle what it was trying to shield you from. This isn't just psychological poetry. Neuroscience has confirmed what Jung intuited. Traumatic memories get stored differently in the brain. They remain timeless, forever present, forever dangerous. Until you consciously revisit and integrate them, they keep firing as if the threat is still real. But here's where most people get stuck, even those who understand the shadow. They fall into what Jung called the persona trap. The persona is the mask you wear in public, the role you play, the image you project. And here's the insidious part. The more perfect your persona, the more vulnerable you actually are. Think about the successful businessman who builds his entire identity on being powerful and in control. One failure, one moment of vulnerability, and his entire sense of self collapses. Or the mother who defines herself entirely by her children. When they leave, who is she? Jung observed that the people who seem most together are often the most fragile because they've invested everything in maintaining an image. And images can shatter with a single crack. The truly untouchable person doesn't have a perfect persona. They have what Jung called a transparent persona, a social face that's permeable, flexible, honest. They can be professional at work and playful at home. They can be strong when needed and vulnerable when appropriate. They're not protecting an image because they're not identified with an image. Here's a practical test. If someone accused you of being the opposite of how you see yourself, would it destroy you? If you pride yourself on being smart, could you laugh at your own stupidity? If you identify as kind, could you acknowledge your capacity for cruelty? If not, you're trapped in a persona, and that persona is your weakness. Now we venture into Jung's most profound insight, one that explains not just personal pain but the suffering of entire societies. Jung discovered that shadows aren't just individual, they're collective. Entire groups, entire nations, entire civilizations have shadows. In the 1930s, Jung watched in horror as Germany fell under a collective shadow projection. All the qualities Germans couldn't accept in themselves, weakness, inferiority, shame from World War I, got projected onto others. The result was catastrophic. But here's what this means for you. You're not just carrying your personal shadow, you're carrying your family's shadow, your culture's shadow, humanity's shadow. Those deep fears about not being enough, they might go back generations. That shame about certain aspects of yourself, it might be inherited from ancestors you never met. This sounds overwhelming, but it's actually liberating, because it means that much of what hurts you isn't even yours. You're just the current carrier of ancient pain, and you can be the one who finally heals it. Jung treated a woman who suffered from crippling anxiety. Through analysis, they discovered her anxiety matched exactly the life circumstances of her grandmother, who had lived through war, displacement, starvation. The woman was living her grandmother's trauma, passed down through invisible psychological inheritance. Once she understood this, once she could separate her grandmother's legitimate fears from her own safe reality, the anxiety began to dissolve. She wasn't broken. She was just carrying someone else's survival response. As Jung aged, he discovered something that went beyond even shadow integration. He called it the transcendent function, the psyche's ability to hold opposites without choosing sides. Most of us live in a world of either or. Either I'm strong or I'm weak. Either I'm good or I'm bad. Either I succeed or I fail. This binary thinking is what creates our vulnerability. Because life isn't binary, it's paradoxical. The transcendent function allows you to be both strong and weak, both good and bad, both succeeding and failing. Not in different moments, but simultaneously. This isn't confusion, it's completion. Jung himself embodied this. He was a respected psychiatrist and a mystic who talked to his own soul. He was a rational scientist, and a man who built a tower with his bare hands to house his visions. He didn't choose sides, he transcended sides. When you develop this function, criticism stops hurting in the same way. Someone calls you selfish? You can say, yes, I have selfish parts, and I have selfless parts. Thank you for seeing one aspect of my wholeness. Someone says you're a failure? Yes, I fail regularly, and I succeed regularly. Both are true. This isn't denial or deflection. It's the deepest acceptance possible. You're acknowledging the full spectrum of your humanity. And when you do that, when you stop defending against half of yourself, you become indefensible, because there's nothing left to attack. Here's where Jung diverges radically from modern psychology. He distinguished between the ego, the conscious sense of I, and the self, the totality of your being, conscious and unconscious. The ego is what gets hurt. The ego compares, judges, suffers. It's the part that says, I'm not enough, or I'm better than others. It's desperately trying to maintain its position, its identity, its story. But the self is untouchable, not because it's strong, but because it includes everything. It includes your strength and your weakness, your shadow and your light, your failures and successes. It's the whole mandala, not just one piece. Jung often drew mandalas, circular geometric patterns representing wholeness. He had his patients draw them too, because the mandala shows what the self knows. Everything belongs. Every part of you, even the parts you hate, even the parts that hurt, they're all necessary for the whole. When you operate from self instead of ego, life becomes radically different. Insults become interesting data about the insulter's projections. Failures become experiments in growth. Even trauma becomes compost for wisdom. Let me give you Jung's most powerful tool, refined through decades of practice. It's called active imagination, but don't let the gentle name fool you. This is psychological dynamite. Every night before sleep, Jung would descend into what he called the imaginal realm. Not imagination as in making things up, but imagination as a real psychological space where the conscious and unconscious meet. Here's the practice. Sit quietly and let an image arise. Don't create it. Let it come. Maybe it's a dark forest, a locked door, a figure in shadow. Now, and this is crucial, interact with it. Don't observe it like a movie. Enter it like a virtual reality. If there's a door, open it. If there's a figure, talk to it. If there's a path, walk it. And here's the key. Let the imagination surprise you. Don't script what happens. Let your unconscious speak. Jung once encountered a wise old man in his imagination who told him things Jung didn't consciously know. This figure, who Jung called Philemon, became his inner teacher for years. Was Philemon real? Wrong question. Philemon was psychologically real, and psychological reality is what shapes your entire experience of life. When you practice active imagination with your triggers and wounds, something remarkable happens. That person who hurt you appears, but now you can dialogue with them on equal terms. That childhood trauma resurfaces, but now you can comfort your younger self. That fear manifests, but now you can negotiate with it. You're literally rewiring your psychological patterns from the inside out. One of Jung's most beautiful concepts is the wounded healer. He noticed that the best therapists, the most compassionate helpers, the strongest leaders, they weren't the ones who never suffered. They were the ones who transformed their suffering into wisdom. Your wounds, the very things that make you vulnerable, are also your gifts to the world. But only if you do the work of integration, only if you descend into your own underworld and emerge with treasure. Jung himself suffered from intense visions, crushing depressions, and periods where he questioned his sanity. But instead of suppressing these experiences, he explored them. He painted them, carved them in stone, wrote them in his red book. And from this exploration came insights that revolutionized psychology. Think about your deepest wound, the thing that hurts most. Now imagine that wound, fully healed and integrated, becoming your greatest strength. The abandoned child becomes the person who never abandons others. The rejected teenager becomes the includer of outcasts. The betrayed adult becomes the beacon of trustworthiness. This isn't positive thinking. This is psychological alchemy. You're not denying the lead, you're transforming it into gold. As you do this inner work, Jung observed something strange starts happening. He called it synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that seem to respond to your psychological state. You think of someone and they call. You need an answer and a book falls open to the right page. You face a fear and suddenly opportunities appear that require exactly the courage you just developed. Skeptics dismiss this as confirmation bias, and maybe they're right. But Jung saw it differently. He believed that as you integrate your psyche, as you become whole, you start resonating with the wholeness of the universe itself. The inner and outer worlds begin to mirror each other more clearly. Whether you believe in synchronicity or not, one thing is observable. When you stop being triggered by life, life stops triggering you. When you stop fighting shadows, shadows stop appearing. When you integrate your wounds, you stop attracting situations that wound you. And now we come to Jung's ultimate secret, the one he only shared with his closest students, the one that makes you truly untouchable. You are not who you think you are. The you that gets hurt, the you that suffers, the you that feels insufficient, that's not the real you. That's a collection of patterns, memories, beliefs, and stories. It's what Jung called the ego complex. The real you, what Jung called the self with a capital S, is something far more vast. It's the awareness that watches your thoughts. It's the consciousness that experiences your emotions. It's the presence that remains unchanged no matter what happens to your body, your life, your identity. When you touch this self, even for a moment, you understand why nothing can really hurt you. Because the real you was never born and can never die. It was never wounded and needs no healing. It was always whole, always complete, always untouchable. But, and this is crucial, you don't reach the self by rejecting the ego. You reach it by fully embracing and integrating everything the ego contains. Every shadow, every wound, every fear. You have to become fully human before you can transcend humanity. There was a moment in Jung's life when he realized he was no longer afraid of death. Not because he believed in an afterlife, but because he had touched something in himself that he knew was beyond life and death. He called it the eternal in man. This is where the journey leads, not to a life without pain, that's impossible and not even desirable, but to a life where pain is just sensation, where insults are just sounds, where loss is just change. You still feel everything, but nothing owns you. You become like water. Strike water with a sword and it parts, then reforms, unchanged. Freeze it and it expands with irresistible force. Heat it and it transforms into vapor, only to return as rain. It takes the shape of any container while maintaining its essential nature. This is what Jung meant by becoming untouchable, not rigid invulnerability, but fluid adaptability, not walls that can't be breached, but space that can't be grasped. Everything I've shared with you, the shadow work, the persona awareness, the active imagination, the integration of opposites, these aren't just concepts to understand. They're practices to embody, and they work. Millions of people have used Jung's methods to transform their deepest wounds into their greatest strengths. But here's the thing. Knowing about the shadow doesn't integrate it. Understanding the persona doesn't free you from it. Reading about becoming untouchable doesn't make you untouchable. Only direct experience does. So here's my challenge to you. No, Jung's challenge to you. Tonight, when something triggers you, when someone's words sting, when life presses on your wounds, don't run, don't distract. Don't numb. Instead, turn toward the pain with curiosity. Ask it what it's trying to show you. Listen to what it's trying to protect. Thank it for its service, then integrate it into your wholeness. Because on the other side of that integration isn't just freedom from pain. It's freedom to be fully, unapologetically, untouchably yourself. The kingdom of the self awaits. The only question is, will you claim your throne? Remember what Jung himself said. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But once you do, once you accept every shadow, every wound, every broken piece of yourself, you discover something magnificent. You were never broken at all. You were always whole. You just forgot. And in that remembering, in that coming home to yourself, you find what Jung found, an unshakable peace that no external force can disturb. Not because you've built better armor, but because you've removed the need for armor altogether. You've become untouchable, not by becoming invulnerable, but by becoming complete. The journey to psychological invulnerability isn't a destination. It's an ongoing process of meeting yourself more deeply, more honestly, more completely. Every trigger is a teacher. Every wound is a doorway. Every shadow is a lost piece of your soul, waiting to come home. Will you answer the call? Will you descend into your own depths and emerge transformed? Will you take Jung's secret and make it your own? The choice is yours. But know this, once you begin this journey, once you taste true psychological freedom, there's no going back. You'll never again be satisfied with a life lived in fear of your own shadows. Welcome to the path of individuation. Welcome to becoming untouchable.